Joseph and Natalia, a fairly ordinary young couple living an ordinary life. Joseph, a hard-working office drone, counting down the minutes until the clock struck 5. Natalia, a vibrant soul with a thirst for adventure. Little did Joe know, Natalia held a secret, a legacy passed down through generations. She was a Van Helsing, a hunter of the night, sworn to protect the world from the shadows. Today started like any other. The sun peeked through the blinds, casting shadows across their cozy apartment. The smell of coffee filled the air, a comforting aroma that signaled the start of a new day. Joe grumbled as the alarm clock blared, its insistent beeping dragging him from his slumber. He fumbled for the snooze button, stealing a few precious minutes of sleep. Natalia, already awake and humming a cheerful tune, busied herself in the kitchen making breakfast. She flipped pancakes with practiced ease. Pancakes for breakfast had become one of her specialities. Her mind raced with anticipation of the day ahead. Soon she would reveal her birthday surprise to Joe, a surprise that promised to turn their ordinary world upside down. As Joe stumbled into the kitchen, bleary-eyed and yawning, "Good morning, sleepyhead," said Natalia. "I have a surprise for you and you won't believe it." Natalia greeted him with a grin that could outshine the sun. "What is it?" Joe replied. "Guess what? We're going to Venice," Natalia said with excitement. "Venice? What are you talking about?" Natalia's grin widened. "And guess what? I found an amazing deal on Instagram. An apartment overlooking St. Mark's Plaza for a whole week." Natalia exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Joe, his brain still struggling to catch up, stared at her blankly. Venice, the city of canals, gondolas, and romance. It seemed like a scene from a movie, not their reality. "Natalia, yes, Venice, the city of pizzas and pasta. It's for your 21st birthday," she added, her voice softening. "Natalia, a whole week in one of the most romantic cities in the world." The weight of her words finally sunk in. Joe, overwhelmed by this unexpected and incredibly thoughtful gift, could only manage a stunned wow. He pulled Natalia into a tight embrace, burying his face in her hair. He couldn't remember the last time he had been so surprised, so utterly and completely swept off his feet. "Joe, when do we leave?" he finally asked, a grin spreading across his face. "This weekend. Pack your bags." Joe couldn't believe his luck. Venice, a dream come true thanks to his amazing girlfriend. While Joe reveled in the prospect of romantic gondola rides and Italian delicacies, Natalia's mind raced with darker thoughts. Venice, for all its beauty, held a sinister secret, a lurking evil that had drawn her to its winding canals and shadowy alleyways. Rumours had reached her of missing tourists, vanishing without a trace in the labyrinthine heart of the city. Whispers of a new breed of vampire, more cunning and ruthless than any before, making her blood run cold. Her family legacy, the burden and the honor of the much-respected Van Helsing bloodline weighed heavily upon her. Natalia's father, on his deathbed, had revealed the truth of their ancestry, passing down centuries of knowledge and the tools needed to combat the undead. He spoke of ancient rituals, of wooden stakes and Christianity, of the insatiable thirst that drove these creatures of the night. Natalia felt a familiar surge of adrenaline, a mixture of fear and determination that had fueled her ancestors for generations. Venice awaited, a city of beauty and terror, and Natalia Van Helsing was ready to face the darkness that lurked within its heart. Joe, still reeling from the Venice surprise, looked up. His girlfriend held out a small velvet box. He took it, his fingers brushing against hers. Inside, nestled on a bed of white satin, lay a gold necklace, a simple chain with a cross pendant, a crucifix, the golden metal glinting under the apartment lights. Joe's brow furrowed. It was beautiful, no doubt, but Joe, thanks so much, Nat, but I'm not exactly religious, you know? Natalia's smile didn't falter. "Natalia, I know, but it's cool, right?" Before Joe could respond, she added, "Put it on, yeah?" Her tone was persuasive, and anyway, Joe found himself strangely drawn to the pendant. Maybe it was the way the light caught the crucifix or the thick, chunky gold chain itself. Whatever it was, he found himself fastening the clasp at the back of his neck. Natalia, watching him, let out a small sigh. Good. It was in place. Joe, staring at his reflection in the hallway mirror, couldn't help but like it. Venice, here, we come. Upstairs, Natalia unzipped her suitcase and began packing, her movements a flurry of controlled chaos. She tossed in shorts, t-shirts, sundresses, the usual holiday attire. But beneath the colorful fabrics, she stashed away a different kind of luggage. Garlic salt nestled amongst her toiletries. A bottle of water, refilled not from the tap, but from a hidden spring her father had taught her about, its water said to hold ancient blessings. And finally, wrapped carefully in a thick towel, a sturdy wooden table leg sharpened rather crudely to a point, not exactly standard vacation fare. Guilt pricked at Natalia's conscience. Joe, blissfully unaware downstairs, thought they were going on a romantic getaway. He didn't know about the darkness that clung to their trip, about the centuries-old battle against the undead he was unwittingly stumbling into. She had to tell him eventually, but not yet. Fear, cold and sharp, gripped her heart. What if telling him changed everything? What if he looked at her differently? Fear replacing the love and adoration in his eyes. No, she couldn't risk it, not yet. She would protect him, even if it meant keeping secrets, even if it meant lying. She zipped the suitcase shut, feeling mixed emotions, and with something of a knot in her stomach. Venice welcomed them with open arms and a breathtaking sunset. The air, thick with the scent of salt and something indefinable, ancient and alluring, sent shivers down Natalia's spine. Joe, meanwhile, was captivated. This is amazing, Nat. Just look at those buildings, those bridges. It's like stepping back in time. Natalia managed to smile, forcing herself to push down the unease that churned in her gut. The closer they got to their destination, to the Dorsoduro district where whispers of the undead lingered, the heavier the air seemed to grow. Their apartment was everything Natalia had hoped for, charming, with a view overlooking the distant water that took Joe's breath away. He was already pulling out his phone, snapping photos to send to his friends, while Natalia surveyed their surroundings, her senses on high alert. Joe, is it time to get a pizza? I saw a place around the corner, right on the water. Do you think they do ham and pineapple? Joe said with a cheeky smile. Natalia nodded and said, probably not pineapple, it's Italy, you dope, not Domino's. Relief washing over her. Food, normality, at least for now anyway. A brief respite from the darkness that she knew lurked just beneath the surface of this beautiful city. Natalia and garlic bread, lots of garlic bread. Joe, oblivious to the underlying reason for her request, just grinned. You read my mind, he said, pulling her close for a kiss. Natalia, lost in his embrace for a fleeting moment, allowed herself to forget, to pretend. But deep down she knew. The hunt had already begun. The pizzeria buzzed with the chatter of tourists and the clatter of cutlery. Joe, famished after their journey, devoured his pizza with gusto. Natalia, however, picked at her food, her gaze darting from table to table, searching for any sign, any whisper of the creatures that haunted her thoughts. The garlic bread, pungent and potent, sat untouched on her plate, a silent sentinel against the unseen. Joe, oblivious to her internal turmoil, reached for a slice. Natalia didn't stop him. It wouldn't make a difference, not really. But it gave her a sliver of comfort, a talisman against the encroaching darkness. Outside, night had fallen. Shadows stretched long and lean, twisting familiar landmarks into something sinister and strange. The canals, reflecting the moon's pale light, looked like veins, pulsing with a lifeblood Natalia knew was not entirely human. Joe, this place is amazing. I can't believe we're actually here. Natalia, her senses on high alert, scanned the crowd. Tourists laughed, couples whispered, gondoliers serenaded passers-by. But beneath the surface of happy holiday vibes, she sensed a current of unease, a prickling at the back of her neck that spoke of unseen eyes, of ancient hunger. Cocktails? Joe's suggestion pulled Natalia back from her thoughts. He gestured towards a bar across the alleyway. Katina Doshama, he read from a crumpled tourist map, says here it's a local favorite, full of life, a hidden treasure for my treasure. Natalia hesitated, a flicker of unease momentarily eclipsing her carefully constructed facade. It was the same bar, the one her father's notes had mentioned, the one where Madeline, the vampire queen, had been sighted just days before. Fate, it seemed, had a twisted sense of humor. "Sure," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "Why not?" The bar was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of cigarettes and spilled liquor. A group of young women dressed in black, their eyes heavily lined with dark makeup, occupied a table in the corner. Their laughter, harsh and grating, sent a chill down Natalia's spine. She knew with a certainty that had nothing to do with logic that those were their targets. Joe, oblivious to her internal struggle, steered her towards a table near the window. "Limoncello spritz or maybe Aperol?" he asked, his eyes twinkling. "I wonder if they have any fresh bread and olives." Natalia nodded, her gaze fixed on the group in the corner. One of them, a blonde with a cruel, knowing smile playing on her lips, raised her glass in a mocking toast. Natalia's fingers tightened around her own glass. The hunt was on. The blonde Madeline, Natalia now knew with chilling certainty, exuded an aura of power, of ancient malice barely concealed beneath a veneer of youthful charm. Her shrill laughter, like shards of ice, cut through the bar's ambient noise. Natalia, her every sense on high alert, studied her, committing every detail to memory. Madeline's companions, pale and predatory, hung on her every word, their eyes glittering with a hunger that made the hairs on Natalia's neck stand on end. Joe, oblivious to the danger swirling around them, seemed captivated by the group, his gaze lingering on Madeline's companion, a tall, dark-haired man with curly hair and a brooding intensity. As if sensing their scrutiny, Madeline turned, her gaze colliding with Natalia's. A slow, rather sinister smile spread across her lips, revealing a flash of pointed fangs. Natalia's breath hitched in her throat. She had seen enough horror movies to recognize a threat when she saw one, and this was beyond anything she could have imagined. "Everything all right, Nat?" Joe's voice, laced with concern, jolted Natalia back to the present. She forced a smile, her hand trembling slightly as she lifted her glass to her lips. "Fine," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper. "Just tired, I guess." It was a lie, of course. She wasn't tired. She was terrified. And she had a sinking feeling that this was only the beginning. Madeline's eyes held Natalia's, a silent battle of wills taking place across the dimly lit bar. Natalia, her pulse quickening, refused to back down. She had faced down bullies before, albeit not ones with fangs and a taste for blood. A tense silence stretched between them, broken only by the clinking of glasses and the murmur of conversations from nearby tables. Then, with a disarming smile that did little to ease Natalia's apprehension, Madeline gestured towards the empty chairs at their table. "Care to join us?" she asked, her voice somewhat husky and hypnotic. "We have a huge jug of sangria that needs drinking." Joe, ever the friendly extrovert, readily agreed. "Yeah, sure," he said, his gaze flitting between Madeline and her companions with unconcealed interest. "The more the merrier, right?" Natalia shot him a warning glance, but it was too late. They were already on their feet, being ushered towards the vampire's table like lambs to the slaughter. As they settled into the vacant chairs, Natalia found herself uncomfortably close to Madeline. The vampire's scent, a subtle mix of roses and something metallic, filled her nostrils, triggering a primal fear that gave her instant goosebumps on both arms. She gripped a hidden cross beneath her shirt, drawing strength from its familiar shape. The next hour passed in a blur of forced smiles and strained conversation. Madeline, her initial predatory edge softening slightly, peppered Natalia with questions about her life, her travels, her relationship with Joe. Natalia, acutely aware of the danger lurking beneath the vampire's seemingly innocuous inquiries, answered cautiously, revealing as little as possible. Joe, meanwhile, knocking back his large glass of sangria, seemed oblivious to the tension crackling in the air. He chatted easily with Madeline's companions, laughing at their jokes, completely enamored by their superficial charm. Natalia, watching him from across the table, felt a surge of protectiveness. He had no idea what he was dealing with, the ancient evil that lurked beneath the surface of their beautiful pale faces. As the night wore on, Natalia's unease grew. She made eye contact with Joe, silently conveying her desire to leave. He, finally picking up on her discomfort, nodded subtly. They made their excuses, citing fatigue from their journey, and rose to leave. Madeline, however, had other plans. "Leaving so soon?" she asked, her voice laced with disappointment. "The night is young. Why don't you join us at my place? We're having a little gathering, an intimate get-together with a few close friends of mine." Natalia's heart sank. It was an invitation she couldn't refuse, not without arousing suspicion. And she knew with a certainty that chilled her to the bone that stepping into Madeline's lair was akin to entering the lion's den. Madeline's little gathering turned out to be a lavish affair, held in a sprawling palazzo overlooking one of Venice's quieter canals. The guests, a mix of wealthy socialites and shadowy figures who made Natalia's skin crawl, mingled beneath glittering chandeliers, sipping champagne and exchanging hushed conversations in a multitude of languages. Natalia, feeling increasingly out of place, stuck close to Joe, her hand resting lightly on his arm, her fingers digging into his flesh whenever Madeline or one of her companions ventured too close. The atmosphere in the palazzo was stifling, heavy with unspoken menace. Natalia couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, assessed, their every move scrutinized by unseen eyes. As the night wore on, Madeline's attention seemed to focus increasingly on Natalia. She would appear at her elbow at the most unexpected moments, her eyes glittering with an unnerving intensity. "You're very quiet, Natalia," she observed at one point, her voice barely a whisper. "Don't you like parties?" Natalia forced a smile, her hand instinctively clutching the silver cross beneath her shirt. "It's just not really my scene," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. Madeline's smile widened, revealing a flash of partially concealed, pointed fangs. "I understand," she replied softly, her voice laced with an unspoken threat. "But everyone needs a little excitement in their lives, don't they?" Natalia, her heart pounding against her ribs, could only nod, praying that Joe wouldn't notice the fear that clawed at her throat. She had to get them out of there, and fast. But how? They were trapped, caught in a web of ancient evil, and Natalia feared that escape might be impossible. The palazzo's lavish facade felt more like a prison with each passing moment. Natalia fought the urge to run, to scream, to do anything but stand there, caught in the clutches of creatures straight out of her worst nightmares. Joe, rather oblivious to all the dark goings-on around him, remained captivated by the party's opulent facade. He sipped champagne, nibbled Italian canapes, and exchanged pleasantries with guests who set Natalia's teeth on edge. "This place is incredible," Joe exclaimed, his voice a touch too loud as he gestured towards a particularly grotesque sculpture. "You wouldn't believe the people here, Nat, real movers and shakers." Natalia managed a strained smile. "That's nice, honey," she murmured, her eyes scanning the room, searching for an escape route, an opportunity. But every doorway seemed guarded, every shadow a potential hiding place for something sinister. Madeline, a predator toying with its prey, kept a watchful eye on Natalia, her lips curled in a mocking smile that gave Natalia shivers everywhere. The vampire queen moved through the crowd with an unnerving grace, her laughter echoing like shards of broken glass. Natalia felt a cold dread creep up her spine. She had to get Joe out of there. But how? "Joe," Natalia whispered, her fingers digging into his arm. "We need to leave, now." Panic welled up inside Natalia. She had to get Joe out of there, now. She tugged at Joe's arm. "Joe, I think we should go. I'm not feeling well." "What's wrong? You look pale." "It's probably the heat. It's rather stuffy in here. I just need some fresh air." Maddie, who had been watching their exchange, gave a small, knowing smile. As soon as they were outside, Natalia grabbed Joe's hand and pulled him into a run, her grip firm and unyielding. They raced through the narrow streets, their footsteps echoing on the cobblestones, the sound reverberating off the ancient walls. "Natalia, what the hell? What's going on? Why are we running? I'll explain later. Just keep running. We don't have time to stop." They didn't stop running until they reached the safety of their apartment, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. Natalia slammed the door shut and leaned against it, her heart pounding, her mind racing with thoughts of their narrow escape. "Natalia, you have to tell me what's going on. I need to know now." Joe's voice trembled as he spoke, the fear evident in his eyes. Natalia took a deep breath, steeling herself for the revelation. Joe, those people, they're vampires, real dangerous vampires. Joe stared at her, his eyes wide with disbelief, struggling to process the information. Vampires? Don't be ridiculous. This can't be real. I'm serious, Joe. We have to get out of here, now. Our lives depend on it. Joe's face paled, the gravity of the situation sinking in. He had seen the look of fear in her eyes as they left the palazzo and the urgency in her actions now, leaving him convinced that she was telling the truth. He realized with a jolt that she was telling the truth. The danger was real. What do we do now, Natalia? How do we fight something like this? We fight back, Joe. We find a way to survive. We can't let them win. Just as Natalia and Joseph stepped inside their apartment, Madeline appeared from the dark, standing at the doorway. "Oh, Natalia, I think you forgot something," Maddie said in a rather unsettling tone. "What?" Natalia asked. "Us," Madeline said. "You forgot your new friends. We've come to play." And then Madeline and her friends all began to hiss and snarl, opening their mouths to reveal their long, sharp fangs, together with Jamie, who was looking rather scary and menacing, laughing deeply. "Oh my God, what the actual hell," screamed Joseph. "Do not invite them in. I've seen it in Dracula movies. Vampires cannot step inside unless they have been invited." "Don't be rude, my new friends," Madeline said softly in a rather chilling tone. "We are all thirsty and ready to party at your place, and you are for dessert. Can we come in?" "Absolutely not," shouted Natalia, her face strained with anxiousness. "Stay away from us, you evil bitches from hell, you undead hussies, you she-devils. You won't be stepping inside. There's no way I'm inviting you inside." And with that, Madeline slowly started to put a foot inside, across the boundary line, her bloodshot eyes piercing the darkness. "But you can't. How can you come inside? I didn't invite you." "Oh, Natalia, how right you are, Natalia Van Helsing. I know exactly who you are. I met your father once, albeit briefly. Nice man. Rather elusive, though. You don't need to invite me, because it was me that invited you," cackled Madeline, rather like a witch. "Remember that advert you saw for a Venice apartment? Well, it was my advert. I targeted you, snared you in my trap. I know who you are, and I wanted you here. I have been waiting to celebrate your last night in existence. In fact, we all have." Maddie paused for a second and smirked. "And by the way, I don't need to be invited inside because it is my apartment. I own it, so step aside. I'm coming in. Move aside, you poor, pathetic excuse of a human being. We are coming in, and we are coming in now." Natalia panicked and ran inside. Madeline and her gang stepped inside arrogantly and immediately made themselves at home, sitting on the furniture. "Come here, Natalia," she said. "Let me see that pretty little necklace that you're wearing." Natalia immediately clasped the necklace around her neck. It was a beautiful silver cross-shaped amulet on an antique chain. "Did your daddy give you that amulet?" Natalia laughed madly. "I saw it on your Instagram and I want it now. Give it to me. You have no idea what you're wearing, you naive, pathetic little girl," she snapped. Madeline grabbed the amulet forcefully and ripped the chain from Natalia's neck. "At last I have the amulet containing the last few drops of our Dark Lord's blood. With this, I will become the most powerful vampire that ever lived." As Maddie and her fellow vampires started circling Natalia, she grabbed Joe's hand and ran into the bedroom where she had her suitcase. She locked the door and quickly opened her suitcase in a hurry, which made everything fall on the floor. To Joe's surprise, it wasn't just clothes, and he was getting more and more confused about the whole situation. Everything was happening so fast, and it was rapidly getting scarier and scarier. Natalia handed a bottle of water to Joe and screamed, "Quickly, grab this. It's holy water. And here is some garlic salt." Natalia grabbed the table leg that she'd packed, which was pointed at one end, and held it as a weapon. "Stake that bitch in the heart," shouted Joe. "Come on, you can do it." The door opened slowly and Madeline walked in, followed by her accomplices, including Jamie, who was towering over all of them, growling with huge fangs ready to drink their blood. Joe panicked and threw the holy water at the vampires, but it fell out of his hand and the bottle smashed on the floor. "No!" screamed Natalia. "Joe, you moron, the holy water!" The puddle of water dripped through the floorboards while Madeline and her small army just laughed. "Well, this is going to be one of the easiest fights in my long life, you tiresome, tedious of English idiots." Joe started sprinkling the garlic salt in front of him in a line. "I've eaten already, Joseph, thank you." snarled Madeline. "Powdered garlic does nothing to a vampire. You're just a pair of idiots in over your pretty little heads. I don't want to eat, I want to drink. We all want to drink. We want to drink your blood. We are thirsty. We haven't had fresh blood for days now." Brandishing the sharpened table leg, Natalia charged towards the vampires, determined to kill their leader. But Jamie stuck out his foot and Natalia tripped, stumbling to the floor and realizing that her defeat was inevitable. She was completely out of her depth. She'd never even fought a vampire before, and Madeline was not just any vampire either. She was powerful, very much in control. And this was clearly going to be both Natalia's first and last vampire battle. "Now show me your neck," Madeline whispered softly as the room fell silent. "I want to taste your blood. But first, I want to taste the blood of the Dark Lord. I want his power, for I'm going to turn the whole island of Venice into an island of vampires. I will be unstoppable as they bow before me and worship everything I do and say." Madeline started to open the amulet. The lid was stuck and she struggled a little. All the time the tension was building. She gripped it tightly, slowing, turning it to reveal the Dark Lord's blood inside. She started to drink, and then Madeline moved towards Natalia. "And now it is your turn. Give in, don't resist, join us." But Madeline started to cough and began stumbling over her words. She looked confused and fell to the floor, writhing around, screaming, "What have you done to me? What did I drink? Ah!" Madeline started to smoke, and blue flames quickly covered her body in a flash before she suddenly turned to dust. All of the other vampires, her children from over the years, also fell to the floor. The sound of them all screaming and shouting pierced their ears, while Natalia and Joe just watched on, shocked at the supernatural scene they were witnessing right in front of them. "What the hell is going on?" said Joe. "What the hell, Natalia?" "I didn't know if it would work," Natalia said, breathless. "That necklace was indeed a vessel for the blood of Dracula, but my father turned it into a talisman before his death. He told me that Dracula's blood had been mixed with holy water blessed many years ago by the Pope himself, Pope John Paul II, turning it into a weapon capable of vanquishing the undead. And it actually worked. I can't believe it worked." "Are you all right?" she asked, her voice catching in her throat. "Did they hurt you?" Joe shook his head, his gaze meeting hers, a slow smile spreading across his face. "I'm fine," he said, pulling her close, his arms wrapping around her in a hug that was both comforting and protective. "We're fine." They stood there for a long moment, lost in the afterglow of adrenaline and the overwhelming relief of survival. The city around them, no longer menacing, seemed to sigh with contentment, the canals shimmering like ribbons of molten gold in the morning light. "Happy birthday," Natalia whispered, her lips brushing against Joe's ear. He chuckled, a low rumble in his chest. "Best birthday ever," he replied, his voice laced with a mixture of awe and disbelief. "So, vampires, huh?" Natalia nodded, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Vampires," she confirmed, "and werewolves, actually, and, well, let's just say it's a long story." Joe laughed, a sound full of wonder and a touch of nervous energy. "I bet it is," he said, his eyes twinkling. "But hey, we've got a whole week in Venice, plenty of time for stories." And as they walked hand in hand towards the Rialto Bridge, the rising sun behind them, the horrors of the night fading with the darkness, Natalia knew that he was right. They had a lifetime of adventures to come and perhaps even a few more vampires to defeat. The end.